Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. If you don't know me, my name is Anca. I will be your host for the day. And we will be talking about how you can batch content and win more time for your social media. Together with me, you will see my colleague Andrea, who will be hanging out in the chat with you guys today and making sure that everything works out properly, making sure that you have all the right links, that you have all the right information throughout this entire webinar. In the meantime, while everyone gets settled in, I hope you're grabbing yourself something to drink, a pen, paper, something to take notes. And also, while you're telling me, because I can already see Patricia telling me she's from Miami, so that's awesome. Hi, Patricia. I'm in Romania right now. It's really cold here, so I really wish I were in Miami right now. Tell me where you're joining in from, and I'll go through a few rules that we have usually for each webinar. So first of all, this webinar is recorded, so don't worry if you can't stay throughout the entire webinar, or if you're joining a little bit late, although I guess if you're joining late, you wouldn't be able to see this until the recording. But yes, this webinar is recorded, and you will be getting the recording to your inbox. The second thing is that we do have a Q&A session planned for the end of this webinar. So you'll notice that there is a little Q&A box around here somewhere at the bottom that you can use to ask any questions whenever you have them. So if you have any questions on today's topic, on SocialBee's platform, on today's topic of content batching, you can address them in the Q&A section there, and you can ask them and I'll address them at the end of this webinar. And just to give you something to look up for, if you're not already using SocialBee to batch your content and schedule it and make your life easier, basically, I suggest that you stick with us until the end of this webinar, because we do have a little bit of a surprise for you guys. Okay, so I see people joining in from Quebec, Canada, from Vegas. I feel like this is going to be an awesome webinar. Thanks all for joining me today. I won't keep you any longer. So I will pass the chat situation over to Andrea. I will not look at the chat anymore until later. I will instead go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So I guess I'll start with reintroducing myself. Hi, my name is Anca. I will be your host today, and I'm a customer success specialist here at SocialBee. And today's topic will be on content batching and how you can do so effectively. In today's webinar, we will talk more about how you can create your content, how you can strategize your content, and how you can batch your content in the process. So more specifically, I wanted to talk to you guys about how you can create a content calendar from scratch, why batching content can be so effective for your business, and a few techniques, tips, and tricks to help you generate content ideas. I think these are really important topics to consider if you want to maximize the impact of your social media presence. We'll also touch upon some techniques on batching content that can really streamline your workflow and help you overall, including some best practices for repurposing some content that you might already have so that you can maximize and make the most out of that content. If you're ready, like I am, let's get this ball rolling. Let's start with setting the right terms. We're talking about content batching, but if there's anyone that might not already be familiar with content batching and what this means in social media, batching content simply means that you can create and schedule content in advance. Basically, create multiple pieces of contents in one day and just schedule it in advance so that you can make sure it's out of your way, out of your mind, and you can focus on the other important aspects of your business. This involves planning your content, organizing multiple pieces of content, and you can do this individually. So create your entire posts in batches, or you can batch create different aspects of your posts, the visuals, the scripting for your videos, the captions for your posts, and so on and so forth. Everything can help you streamline your content creation process. So let's start with one of the most important benefits of batching content, and that is to help with time management and productivity. You'll see here on the screen that there are two ways of working. You can batch content and make it easier for you, or you can create content day by day, which every little single dot there can be considered a distraction for you. So when you're constantly switching between different tasks, it can be really difficult for you to get into a creative flow. It can prevent you from maybe creating high quality content. Batching allows you to focus solely on content creation for one day, for a few days, depending on how much content you're creating. And this helps eliminate any distractions that come with creating content on the go. So I don't have to stop what I'm doing because, I should post something now, and I don't know what I'm going to post. Because that is all taken care of because you've taken the time and batched some content so that you have that. Basically, creating content daily can be disruptive to your workflow, and it might require you to stop the way I showed you earlier. With batching your content, you can avoid interruptions like this one, and you can focus on just creating the content that needs to go out. And you can just, I don't know, create the entire month's worth of content in 1 or 2 days. And it would be so easy and effortless for you to do that. The second thing here, the second benefit, I would say, of batching content is that it can improve the consistency of your social media posting. It can make sure that you're creating content is consistent and within the same, I guess, mindset, so to speak. When you're not creating content in batches, when you're creating content on the go, one day at a time, it can be challenging to maintain a consistent posting schedule. It can mean that you're not posting within a rhythm, a cadence. It can mean that people don't know when they need to expect content from you because you might skip days. Let's be honest, not every day is ideal so that you can make time out of your day to create a post. There might be days when something happens and you don't have the time to create posts, and your scheduling might seem a bit chaotic because of that. So batching allows you to plan and create multiple pieces of content so that it makes it easier for you to maintain that cadence and that rhythm to your scheduling. With having the regular posting schedule set up, you can make sure that your audience stays engaged. You can make sure that you grow your reach. You can make sure that all of these flourish so that you're building a successful social media presence in the long term as well. And finally, batching your content requires you to plan a schedule in advance. So you're going to need to think ahead about the content that you want to create, what you need to promote, what types of events you have coming up maybe, and things like that, and what you want to communicate to your audience. What this does is that it helps you ensure that your content is relevant as well as timely, and that you don't miss any important events or milestones, right? So planning your content in advance allows you to ensure that your posts are on brand, that your posts are relevant and high quality. These all, in turn, can work towards building your authority, towards building your credibility, and all of that. Now, a few things that I've seen along the way is people being fearful of batching contents. And these are just a few of the most common fears that we've seen and that we've heard here at SocialBee. So I'm going to address them just really quick in case all of you or some of you have ever thought any of these thoughts. First of all, one of the biggest concerns that I've heard is that batching can lead to a loss of authenticity. People worry that pre-scheduling the posts will make their content lose genuine interest and feel less personal. I'm here to tell you that it's still you writing the post. It's just you writing it in advance with a mindset for posting and a mindset and a goal in your mind. Another concern is that batching content can make your social strategy inflexible, that if you have all of your content planned out in advance, it might be challenging to respond to current events or to breaking news. My response to that is that because you now have your content already set up, your regular content, you now have the bandwidth to handle any breaking news, to handle any current events that you might need to include, because now you don't have to worry about everything else in your content strategy. You can just include the content that needs updating. Another thing is that some people worry that batching can lead to a loss of human touch, to loss of engagement, things like that, and that you may not be able to respond to the comments or questions in real time. Well, I mean, social media in general is quite immediate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to respond right now. So whenever you're posting, there usually is a grace period of a few hours to even 24 hours. And on the other hand, when you're scheduling your content, you might actually make more time for you to engage with your audience, because now you don't have to think about your content. You can just worry about the engagement part. Then we have another concern that people might not be able to schedule any niche content, any super specific pieces of content, such as live streams or Q&A sessions. And to that, I say you can use these on the go and just time slot them into your calendar so that you know you want to do a webinar on content batching, regardless of whether that will be live and not pre-scheduled, because that way you can make time for it. Then you can make time to create the content for it as well. Finally, some people worry that batching content can lead to a loss of quality. Now, here, the fear is that creating content in larger batches may result in lower quality or less original content, because you're going to tend to repeat the same content over and over again. And that's not true when you have the right techniques, when you have the right tools to help you move along with these. And yes, these concerns are valid, but while that's true, it's important to also note that with careful planning and execution of content batching, you are able to overcome these challenges and maintain everything from quality to authenticity to engagement for your audience. So basically think of batching more as the intention of planning ahead and starting the process of content creation in advance. Even that just means adding the topic to your content so that you don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to necessarily be an end product for you to be able to content batch, although that's ideal. Good. So there are 3 steps that we're going to talk about today, which is really like the core of this workshop today. So these 3 steps are going to help take you through the best ways to batch content for your social media. And these 3 steps are creating a content calendar, brainstorming content ideas, as well as creating actual content. So you can repeat the process as frequently as you'd like to. My suggestion would be to start with a weekly frequency. So take a few hours on a Monday or on a Sunday, or however you want to think ahead for the content for the entire next week. This will help you get used to the process. It will help you come up with more content. And once you do that, you can increase or decrease the frequency and maybe create the content for an entire month or an entire 3 months, and things like that. So let's go through each of these steps individually, starting with creating the content calendar. Now, the content calendar is a plan, and this helps you determine if the types of content that you're posting work with your goal. To create the content calendar, though, you're going to need to follow even more steps. Hope you're taking notes. So here are the steps that you need to create your content calendar. Step one being determine the platforms that bring you the most value. Look at the social platforms. In general, look at your social profiles and take an audit of them and see where they are currently. Then identify the categories that will be more relevant for your audience. The categories, by categories, I mean types of content, pillars of content, if you will. You can then plan your posts according to the best times of posting, the best frequency of posting, depending on each platform. And of course, the last thing is something that you might have heard me say a lot in my previous webinars, and that is to balance your content mix, making sure that you're avoiding audience fatigue and making sure that you're avoiding the audience actively ignoring your posting because it's repetitive. To start, it's important to determine which social media platforms will give you the most value. The most valuable platforms here depend on your target audience. They depend on your industry and they depend on your content goals. When marketing on social media, it's crucial to look at the platforms that your target audience is active for. In other words, don't go to TikTok if your audience is not there. That's one thing. To determine this, though, you'll need to consider three things that you're now seeing on the screen. Audience demographics, this is where you look at indicators such as age, gender, location, interests of your audience to see where they would be most likely to hang out. You can then look at content and see what your audience expects you to create. What kind of content does your audience want from you? And then three, this comes to your personal preference and talks about the types of content that you enjoy creating. Another thing to consider is which platforms work well and which don't work for your competition. You can look at them, and of course, this doesn't have to determine 100% what you're doing, but you can look at them as a real indicator of whether your audience is on that platform or not. So let's start with the audience demographics. And what you're currently seeing is the distribution of your audiences based on their age, actually. So think about it this way. Millennials, Gen Z, the younger audiences, they tend to go towards the more trendy platforms, the more trendy apps like Instagram, TikTok, things like that. On the other hand, let's say more mature audiences, more professional maybe, might go towards LinkedIn, towards Facebook, towards Twitter, things like that. So you have to take this into account whenever you're thinking of the platforms you're creating content for. The second thing is to look at what type of content is expected of you based on the platform that you're on, because each type of platform can have a different type of content. So for instance, you're seeing right now the comparison between Instagram and Twitter, where Twitter is a powerful tool for text posts, short, sweet, newsworthy, things like that, whereas Instagram is very visual, it's very entertaining, and it's also educational. On the other hand, we have Facebook versus LinkedIn, where the main difference might be in whether you're talking directly to your consumer, B2C mostly, with a more friendly approach, or LinkedIn, where you're going a little more strategic, more professional, maybe towards a B2B approach as well. You'll also be able to look at maybe Pinterest and Google My Business, where you can see that both of these expect photos, but one of them, Pinterest in this case, is more inspirational. It looks for educational content, for content that they can use to get inspired or motivated. And Google My Business or Google Business Profile is something that will look for reviews and for events or offers or any updates that you might give about your particular business. Now, the truth is you won't create and post content across all of these channels because you won't create content consistently unless you actually create content that you enjoy. So that leads me into the third step here, which would be to ask yourself, what type of content am I most likely to enjoy creating? In other words, if you don't enjoy showing up on video, maybe consider working more towards the other types of content or creating video that does not require you to show up on camera. So you can maybe stay behind the scenes as well. You have a bit of an idea here on the screen to see exactly what type of content works best for what type of platform. So take that into consideration when you're creating your content as well. Okay, so we've done that. Now, the second step that we've talked about is to audit your social media profiles. And it's crucial to look at that and evaluate your strategy to see what's working and what's not working. So when doing this, you can make sure that you optimize your strategy. You can make sure that you're getting the most out of your social media presence. To start, the first thing to do is to look at your top performing content. Look at what works. Look at what resonates with your audience, and find those posts that received maybe the most engagement, the most comments, the most shares, likes, saves, whatever it is that works for the platform that you're looking at. Look at the content itself and see if there's any patterns that you can spot between the topics that you've used, maybe between the approach that you've used, if there's anything that can give you an idea of how you can replicate that success in future content. On the other hand, it's also important to analyze the content that didn't perform, because this can be a great indicator of what went wrong. It can be an indicator of what your audience doesn't want to hear from you. And you can avoid those types of topics, and you can avoid those types of posts in the future. Maybe you've had content that was too promotional, and maybe you've had content that was posted at the wrong time. I don't know. You can look at all of this and identify, again, a pattern and see how you can improve it for the future. And finally, you can also look at your metrics. And I'm talking here about the essential metrics. And you're seeing it on the screen. It's about reach. It's about engagement rates. It's about conversions. It's about these three main pillars of your analytics. And this is the data that will help you understand what's working and what's not, together with the content that you've looked at before. And this will help you create the better strategy moving forward in your content. And we've reached the third step here, which is actually to plan your post according to the best practices for each platform. And basically, what this does is that it helps you reach more of your audience at the right times. So you're going to look at different things here. First of all, the times when your audience is most likely to be active on social media. This can be varied depending on a lot of factors. So for instance, you can look at who your target audience is, and whether, if it's a 9-to-5 commute worker, they might most likely be on social media outside of their working hours. On the other hand, if it's a stay-at-home parent, then they might be on social media when their kid is sleeping, when their kid is at school. So you have to take these, and you have to take into account your audience's online behavior and their rhythm whenever they're online. Second, you can also take into account the best practices for each social platform. Usually there are some best times to post according to best practices for each individual platform, and they can be easily found, and they usually work well with generating engagement, generating reach for your newer posts. And third, you can look at the suggested number of weekly posts for each platform, the ideal number, so to speak, of posts for each platform, which would indicate the frequency that you need to generate content for. So to help you plan your social media schedule in advance, we've created a table that we're summarizing the ideal posting frequency, and let's get into it, because it's awesome. So you're currently seeing this for the main 4 platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can see that there's differences in the best times to post, as well as the best frequency to post for these platforms. And there's also such recommendations for other platforms like Pinterest, Google My Business, and TikTok. So you can take these into consideration. I'll move through them back and forth so that you are able to take screenshots if you want to, but basically make sure you save these and you use them whenever you're deciding when the right time to post is for your audience. And while having said that, we're going into the step 2 in our framework, which is batching content, or actually generating ideas when batching content. How do you generate ideas when filling your calendar? Well, there's a few methods that we can work through. So you have them here on the screen. You'll see that you can reverse engineer content creation. You'll see that you can build a mind map, and you'll see that you can also get inspired from different sources of content. And we'll go through each of them individually. So the first one is to reverse engineer. This is a method of generating ideas that starts by identifying your goal and works backwards to determine the types of content that would work towards achieving that goal. So to do this, you have to answer 2 essential questions, the ones that you'll see on the screen right now. First one being, what do you want to achieve through posting on social media? So let's say that we want to achieve increased engagement, right? That's our goal. We want to increase our engagement. This will help you determine the goal. On the second question, you'll be able to see what types of posts will help you achieve that goal. So if we wanted to increase engagement, we can think, what types of posts can we create to make sure that it generates engagement? And we can consider things like asking questions, like creating polls, quizzes, sharing user-generated content, things that would entice the audience to engage with your content. This method ensures that your content is directly tied to your goals and increases the likelihood that it will resonate with your audience. So to go over it a little bit, the intuitive way consists in generating content ideas, creating content, and hoping to dear God that the content you've posted will help you achieve your goals. On the other hand, you have the reverse way, which starts by defining your goals and then working towards generating ideas, and then lately creating content that would work towards those goals. So you kind of reverse engineer it pretty much. That's really it. The approach is to take a little more of a strategic way towards creating content that helps you achieve your goals, basically. Okay, so I will take a small break from the presentation and look at the chat a little bit, because I want you to try and answer these questions for me for a second. So think about it and see exactly if you can answer these questions, whether adding them to the chat or just saying, yes, I've answered those questions. I'm really curious to see if you've actually used this approach before, or if this is the first time you're hearing about it. Oh, okay, so we have someone. Haha, yay. Okay, so we have the goal to increase recognition and then to sales. Okay, and what types of content can you do to increase the recognition and then to increase sales? What's the type of content that you can create there? On the other hand, Patricia says, to increase my conversations with prospects. Again, the same question. Let's go for the second question here and see what types of content you can create to generate conversations. Kirk says that we just did a giveaway on one of our products. That's a great way to reach new audiences and to introduce new audiences to your product. A little tip there is to continue creating content about that product moving forward, especially when the giveaway ends, so that you can introduce your newer audience to that new product and maybe generate some excitement around it. Then Patricia says, using posts with tips and educational posts. If you're thinking of starting a conversation, my suggestion would be to include something that would entice your audience or your prospects to actually start that conversation or to continue the conversation. So you can think about asking questions or creating something where they can ask you questions and creating a conversation that way. Well, okay, so you can always take more time and consider what you can do there, but we have limited time here on the webinar, so I'm just going to move forward with the second way to creating content, which is creating a mind map. This is another great way to brainstorm ideas. So mind mapping is a visual brainstorming technique. It involves creating a diagram based on your ideas. So it all starts by writing a broad topic in the center of your page and then branch out to subtopics and related posts. You can use the branches or lines to connect the subtopics to the central thing. And it will kind of create what I like to associate with a subway system. So you can use this in all sorts of ways and generate content from broad to very, very specific, and take your audience through the entire funnel if you want to sell them something. So from top of the funnel, where you introduce them to the problem that they might not even know they have, going to the solution, which might be your product or your service. The great thing about mind mapping is that you can keep adding to them as you go along. So this is a constantly evolving tool that can help you generate new ideas. It's also very visual and easy to understand. So it's a great way to organize your thoughts and to track your ideas. And then the third thing is to look at any sources that you might find inspiration for. And we actually have a few sources for you here. So let's start with the holiday calendars. This can help you generate content ideas that are very seasonal, that are very specific to the holidays that are up and coming. So for instance, I can give you some ideas on Halloween, on summer, on Christmas, on whatever, Valentine's Day today. You can create content based on these holidays and make sure that your audience relates to it. The second thing is the comment section. This is where you can get the best type of inspiration, because this is where your audience is talking to you and telling you exactly what they're wanting to see. Just all you have to do is listen, really. You can look at competition posts, you can look at industry magazines, at industry thought leaders, and see what they post about, so that you can find topics that you can add your own value on. You can look at customer reviews and see whether you can create any type of content based on feedback from customers. This would probably be something like a testimonial or a review post or things like that. Or you can even go with customer success stories, where you help your customer achieve something, and that story might just be very inspiring, and it would help other people who are not yet there to kind of get them moving in the right direction. On the other hand, you can also look at employee stories and introduce your team to your audience, so that if they ever have to interact with them, they know who they're speaking with. Now, another few other ideas actually are to look at your top performing content. I've mentioned this before. Also look at industry trends, look at news, look at pop culture. This is very easy to do nowadays. And also think about special promotions. You can look at anything that you might have already planned ahead. Now, we're almost at the end of the content batching process, and the next step is to create content. Actually create content. So there are a few tips and tricks and techniques on how you can do this effectively, and I'll talk you through 3 of them. First one is to keep a content bank, and I'll go into in more detail in a bit. But the first one is to keep a content bank, which is a collection of various types of content ideas that you can pull from whenever you need new content. The second one uses templates, which can save you time and energy, especially if you're creating a lot of content. And the third one is repurposing existing content, where you take content that you've already shared and you repurpose it and you modify it to suit a different platform or different audience or a different purpose even. You can do that. So let's go through each of them in one by one. You have first how you can create a content bank. This is basically a list of your content ideas. You can keep adding ideas to it whenever you want to, whenever you had them. And hey, if you find a post that you enjoy on social media, write what you liked about it and keep it there. And you might later on need that idea and use that idea to create your own content about it. So things like seeing something online, sudden bursts of inspiration, you can write those down into the bank and have them for whenever you need to. And as a help to that, we also are ready to share our resource of 200 plus ideas for social media posts that can help you get inspired. And I'll ask my colleague Andrea to add it in the chat if she hasn't already, so that you can enjoy it. The second tool that I shared here, or technique, not tool necessarily, but the second technique is to share visual templates. And I'll show you a few of the templates that we use here at SocialBee to kind of generate a bit of an idea. So you can see, for instance, what we've been using are on Instagram. And you can see the type of content that we've been creating. And specifically for stories, you can also use, we have another collection of story templates that you can use, and that I'll have my colleague add in the chat as well. Now, we've also mentioned repurposing content here, and repurposing content actively means recycling it, right? So you can look at content that you already have and split it into pieces or reformat it in some way or another and make sure that it works for your next needs. Okay, so what you're seeing here is an example of how you can start from a long piece form of content like a blog post and create different types of content from it. So you can look at it and take your blog post and maybe create insights that I don't know, that you can use for individual posts. This means that you can create multiple posts with insights from that one blog post. You can also quote things from the post and make sure that it's bite-sized but still sharing industry knowledge. You can generate general info or personal opinion on a topic, especially if, let's say, the blog post is not your own, but rather it's a curated piece of content that you might want to share. And because we're nearing the end of the webinar, I also wanted to make sure that we're sharing 5 best practices for repurposing content. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to go through each one of the 5 that we have here. So first one would be identify your best performing content. I've gone through this again and again and again. It's important to look at your past content and see what works for you. The pieces of content that are not time sensitive and that have worked, those are the ones that you're going to want to repurpose and to recycle. Second, use different formats. So if you have shared your blog post and it worked in the past, maybe now think about adding some visuals to it and quoting things from the blog post so that you can make it maybe an infographic or a different social media post. So that's not exactly the same thing. It doesn't have to be duplicated format for it to be recycled. The third thing here is to update old content. You can do this by just going through your older content and adding any updates necessary. This might not work sometimes, but when you have updates, make sure you update your existing content as well. The fourth one is to republish your content a little bit slower. So one of the worries that I constantly hear when it comes to republishing content is, what if my audience gets bored of it? Well, yes. What if you're not publishing the content at a quicker pace so that your audience doesn't get to the point where it gets oversaturated with seeing the same thing over and over again? So make sure there's enough of a distance between two instances of the same content so that you can have a good cadence to that as well. And finally, the fifth one is to cross-promote your content and make sure you're using it for different social platforms that you might be using. And this can help you reach new audiences as well. Now, just as a little bit of an example, I've added the SocialBee post editor here, and I'm trying to show you how you can effectively recycle your content in SocialBee. So for one, you can select your profiles there and you can customize your posts for each profile, which means that you can now add a specific message or a specific formulation, or even just limit the characters based on the platforms that you need to work with. And you can also add variations to your post. You'll see them right about here, which is where you can create multiple instances of the same post, maybe changing the image, maybe rephrasing the caption a little bit to kind of keep it fresh in your audience's eyes. Now, there's a lot of things that SocialBee can help with, especially when it comes to batching content, like importing content in bulk, using RSS feeds to automate content importing, using the content categories to effectively even manage your idea bank, and also scheduling your content, which is pretty obvious. But enough of SocialBee. That's not what this webinar is about. That's last week's webinar. Let's move into a few best practices when it comes to batching content. And the first one is to focus on creating one type of content at a time. You can use this for I don't know, take one day to create images or videos, take one day to create the captions. And, you know, all of this can mean different batching sessions. You can use this with different types of content as well. The second thing is to use a checklist. This will help you plan the content during your batching session, and it will also help you stay organized while doing the content there so that you make sure you don't miss anything that's important. And the third thing here is to review and to optimize. So once you've done your content, you're done with it, you've created it, the next thing that you can do is to step away from it for a moment and then come back and see if you can improve it any further. If you can, do that. If you can't, that means it's good to go. So let's look at all that we've learned today and just kind of give it a summary, a refresher, so to speak. And if you haven't done that yet, please go ahead and add your questions in the Q&A box, which is where I'll be answering in a few minutes. We've learned about how you can set a day or 2 or 3 to create your batches of content and nothing else. This can help you avoid context switching, which is a big productivity killer. So you can let your mind focus on one thing and one thing only, which is creating the content that you need to. On the second thing is that we've learned that batching your content shouldn't strip your social media presence of any creativity, of any uniqueness. You can just automate parts of the content creation process and win more time to work towards the others. And third, finally, ideation doesn't need inspiration. It just needs a clear framework for brainstorming. Probably this is the hardest part of creating content when it comes to coming up with ideas, right? So it doesn't have to be that. You can take all of the knowledge that we've shared with you today, and you can make sure you improve that and create batches of content that work for you. I also wanted to share this special offer with you guys. So if you're not yet a customer of SocialBee, you can become one and see how you can easily content batch and work with your content in SocialBee by using the code webinar20 to get 20% off of your first year, regardless of the plan that you choose. So you can reach out to us at hello@socialbee.io or reach out to myself, and I will gladly help you with anything that you might need. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us today in today's event, and I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope to see your content batching feedback soon. Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next webinar.